Hello and welcome to Clappercast. I'm your host as always, Carson Tamar, and today I'm joined by Mr. Editor-in-Chief Jack Luke Sharp for a little bonus episode as we review Season 1 of Apple TV Plus's Time Bandits, a completely new original take on the original story from the 1981 classic film. We both definitely had our skepticisms going into the show, but honestly, it might be one of the biggest surprises of the year. This is a completely spoiler-free discussion on the first season of the show, so if you were excited for Time Bandits, or if after the fact maybe you're watching this after you've seen Time Bandits, which is releasing on Apple TV Plus, I hope you have a lovely time. Now let's get to our review of Season 1 of Apple TV Plus's Time Bandits. And Jack, I want to start us out today for our bonus episode because I was the one who pushed this episode. You were the one who originally were like, I'm watching the show. And this was on my radar for a while. I've been keeping up with one Taika Waititi. Very ups, very downs. Recently, a lot more downs than ups. Mm-hmm. He riffs on a level I cannot imagine. But not to say I was hate watching this show, but I was like, I am at least curious to continue this narrative, seeing where Taika Waititi goes, and I do not expect this to be good. And so you watched it, and then I watched it, and we're like, we're gonna do this podcast, and I just want to say, I am like, maybe this is one of the biggest surprises in her recent Clappercast history as far as expecting nothing, and I like kind of loved the show. Even when we talked about children's media on this podcast, which like me, Paul, and Alina reviewed the Paw Patrol movies. I think we've talked about Bluey here and there. I've never had a show or media or movie that I looked at and I said like, wow, if I was a kid, I would have genuinely been obsessed with it. This I would have been obsessed with. So funny. The comedic timing in the show, and we'll get to more specifics deeper, but like the comedic timing is great. The cast, the main characters are all fantastic. They have a great energy. The kid they got for this, we'll get in because you have a statement about him, which I could not agree more with. He is phenomenal here. As a children's show, to be very clear, it's not, the deepest thing in the world. I really, on a first viewing at least, was impressed by this, had fun with this. An easy binge watch for these 10 episodes that we were able to watch for this. We were able to watch all of season 1, to be clear. Really enjoy Time Bandits. I'm actually like really shocked by how much I enjoyed this, and we'll get into that more. But Jack, for opening thoughts, what were your thoughts on season 1 of Apple TV Plus's Time Bandits?
Well, this is just going to be another echo chamber of an episode. I went into this. We spoke off air about this privately about when the trailer got released, because I think this had been on standby for a while. It felt like it was announced, and then Gilliam had a back and forth with it, and then it went really quiet until all of a sudden, is it like last week? A trailer just dropped, and I sent you the trailer. I was like, "This looks horrible." I'm so against this, and I think we'll get into that in a little bit later. But I definitely was on the verge of like, I'm not really here for this. I can't really see where they're going to go with it. There was the opportunity to review it, and I thought, well, we'll give something a big try, because we've watched a few bits and pieces on the podcast of going into it wanting to like it and coming out a bit slightly on the downside, which is like something that happens to me a lot. So it's rare to go into something which is relatively new and come out with it. And it took me a while to get on board with this. I think it took me about 2-3 episodes, and then at the end, I just could not stop watching it. I sort of fell in love with this show as well. There's hits and misses. Like I think with a 10-hour production, there's always going to be some sort of difficulty here. But the positives outweigh the negatives by like quite a large amount. But I found myself just like wanting to watch every hour going past this. And when it was over, I generally was slightly heartbroken. We'll get to that as well a little bit later, because it's devised in a way that I didn't think they were going to do what they were going to do. Well, and again, that's specifics anyway. I don't want to get onto that, but specifically about that what chapter, what's next, and stuff like that. Because I was led to believe this was just going to be a very much hardcore remake of the show, and I think that's why I had trouble with at the beginning to decide first and foremost who this was from, what it was about, and the execution. I think there's 3 major stumbling blocks, and I think I think for the three, I got over them quite quick, and at the end, like I said, I just wanted to watch it again. Like I had so much fun with this, and um, I never really sort of put one on one together and thought like this is really a kid show. To me, it didn't feel like it was because I think I'd come from a different angle with the Gilliam stuff. But this is perfect. I just hope people watch it. Like I don't want to come out and shill with Apple. They've been very good to us as a company as well. I think put that forward. But I'm not necessarily a streaming advocate. I think that's been quite well known on this podcast as well. I think from what we've discussed and what's been showcased, I think film on the streaming services have been quite disappointing. But I think you and multiple, I think Jakob as well on Uncut Gems, like Apple TV's output on television is like second to none. So I think my mom and dad have watched Tehran, which I never would have watched. I know that Ted Lasso is massive. They have a few bits and pieces here. Like it's quite big now. Like I think the probably the HBO of the time now. I think they need that next step of just something really drama TV. See if they got like The Sopranos or Boardwalk Empire or just something like that. I think the game is done. But Christ forbid if they got Lord of the Rings instead of Amazon. Whew. Anyway, but yeah, to move on, I was shocked of how good this was. It was so much fun. It did feel like being back into a childlike mentality again, and all the positives were. But yeah, probably maybe one of the biggest surprises, definitely of this year. I can't see anything else even touching upon this, maybe. But it was just so much fun.
I think it's best if we split this episode maybe into like 3 sections. I think we should talk about, and to be clear for everyone at home, tomorrow the first 2 episodes are releasing. Those are the only ones we're going to go into details with. The rest we're going to be very vague about, considering it comes out for the next couple months. I think we should talk about the episodic part of this, the individual stories, just how we feel about that vibe, then get into the overarching plot, because there is an overarching plot where most episodes have episodic dramas and little narratives and stuff. There is an overarching conflict and stuff, so we can kind of get into that a little bit, and then let's discuss how it compares against the movie.
Of course, yeah.
And let's start with the episodic bit, because this is where I think the show shines. I mean, I really think this is, and I agree. I said it was a kids show, and it is for adult. It's for families, rather. I guess I would say, because like I could see pretty much any family turning this on, especially doing the 2 episodes a week. I think is a fantastic move for Apple. I think they've really nailed that more than any other streaming service have as far as releasing and building up momentum like that. I could see any family like tuning in every single week and having a time, because there's stuff for everyone. I mean, the comedic timing is so strong. One thing that caught me off guard, though, is like when you go into the episodic, them traveling time, them traveling to all these different eras. It's not just a remake of the movie, as you mentioned. They go to very completely unique settings, a lot of diverse settings. And I think this is, again, the strongest point of the film. I love every single pretty much side character we have journeys. I think it does a wonderful job tying back to some of them. I guess, you know, there's going to be some convergence here between the episodic nature and the overarching plot, but like they will introduce a character and they do a really great job at giving them a little arc, giving them a little bit of drama. The pacing in this is really strong. I felt like episode 1, I was worried because every episode's like 30 to 40 minutes, and episode 1 was 40 minutes. And I was like, oh, I feel like this could have been 2 episodes. I really hope it doesn't feel a little bit bloated with each episode. Never felt that again. I think when it comes to the adventure, and I know as a kid, and I was obsessed with like history, I was obsessed with animals, I was obsessed with like learning, I would have been truly like, I cannot tell you how obsessed I would have been with every single location they go to. I mean, I was a Night at Museum stan, right? So like I would have been every single episode, because they do a great job at picking stuff throughout history, throughout locations. I think as far as like the filmmaking involved, the color that is brought to this, the imagination that feels like is brought to this is really quite impressive. The visuals are all good. It doesn't feel like they're just sitting on a soundstage surrounded by screens recording. I thought the CGI was strong. I really was like caught up in just in a childhood way of like, I'm not just watching this because I'm waiting for a deeper plot or I'm waiting for a deeper conflict. I enjoyed the adventure of this. And I feel like that's something a lot of media struggles with, whether it's film or especially shows. I mean, for 10 hours to captivate you on an adventure, I was really hooked. And I think the episodic nature and all the individual pieces along that way is handled really well from a production value, from a narrative value. Acting is really good. And I think a lot of that is also, I know I'm kind of rambling here, pulling a Jack Luke Sharp. is tied together by that main ensemble. Their dynamics, I think, are just so strong. And when you look at this cast, I mean, Lisa Kudrow is fantastic. Really, the entire cast is just, I think, carries the show. It almost feels in a way like the really great seasons of Doctor Who, where like,
Oh
yes, the
wow,
individual
yeah.
pieces are really fun and really creative, and you're along for that adventure. But that core cast also is enough to give it that backbone. Like, it really, for me, speaks to that type of experience that I think is a dying art, to be honest. When you watch the Disney Plus shows, not to compare streaming services, and not to say the week that they confirmed that the extended cut of Napoleon was coming, we decided to do a positive Apple TV Plus review. That's not connected, everyone. But when you watch Disney Plus, when you watch even like Star Wars, right? Something that is so made, and we've talked about it on this podcast, that is so made for adventure and that sense of adventure, it fails every single time. I think Time Bandits get it completely correct in creating that. I don't know your thoughts on that.
I agree. I think 10 hours is quite a long time within television. I know that there's like 22 hours, but well, not, it's not 10 hours, sorry, because the 45-minute episodes or 35 minutes. So it's not essentially 10 hours, but it's like two 90-minute films. Well, it's basically one 90-minute film with the two episodes. And the one thing I think to get this across very early is that there is a plot here, and there is one sprinkled throughout. There is an A to a B to a C, but that's always the back burner. The first and foremost, it's the hangout. And I think television shows sometimes struggle to just hang out for a while because I think you've got those hours, you've got those extra minutes. There's a lot of fleshing out to do, a lot of character, a lot of arcs, and I think a lot of HBO shows do. And I think, like you said about the Star Wars, there's just so much to get in there with the CGI and the structure of everything. There's just, it sort of overcomplicates the simplicity of it all. And this was the worry. I sort of went into this thinking, well, if we're going to be hanging around and we're going to hang around with these characters, not only do they have to be engaging, but I think where this comes from, which is Waititi and Clement, very, very New Zealand backed. I think that was always going to be sort of the aspect. If it did not work on that level, this was going to be excruciating to watch, especially without what I felt was going to be sort of like this chase throughout, or not even that. I think I don't even know specifically what I expected from this TV show. I don't think plot wise it was very much. Yes, it's bones of the 81 film, or at least the Gilliam film, but I don't think the idea of a plot was ever put forward to this, and I think there's not really one throughout, and I quite enjoyed that. Weirdly, I think it was just like a hangout. We got to just spend time with these 5 quite wacky, individual, and very strange, obtuse characters. With the main character Kevin, who we need to talk about shortly because I'm sort of bursting to like give this kid praise. It always suffices, even the comedy, even the richness of it. Yes, it's quite dumb and quite silly at times, but it feels appropriate to the medium itself. And like you said, like you're spending quite a lot of time just gallivanting around exploration. It takes quite a lot of considerable time to pause and reflect and keep the back burner on. And it's a rich enough story, but I think weirdly enough, you find yourself wanting to actually stay in these places, like Kevin himself. Like there's one where we go to. Well, I don't want. I really don't want to be specific, not just to spoil the NDA and stuff like that, but also because I think to watch this, it's quite fun how they subvert the expectation of where they go in certain places, but also it's so warm. It's so warm, and it's got like this warmth and texture in the places they go, and they're not overly stylized either. It's not like a massive CGI production. We just end up with people, and it's like the most enjoyable part of the film. I was just sat there thinking, like, it's so good.
Jack, there are people and there are puppets even.
Mm-hmm.
This is a show. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are scenes where any other show would put CGI and there's actually puppets in the show.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I like screamed. I was like, that's incredible. No other show would do that right now.
Yeah, it's very British, this as well. Like that which also surprised me because you've got Gilliam from Monty Python, who comes from essentially America, dives into the Python crew, becomes very like a second citizen of Britain, and I think with Time Bandits, you really get that sort of 1980s craft of handmade pictures, where it's very down and digi, but you've got like this a visual aesthetic and this tone. and coming from like the 80s in Britain, was not particularly nice time for a lot of people, especially like the working class and stuff like that. I think Gilliam caught that in a really interesting way. I think Scott did in his Apple um, infamous Apple uh, advertisement, which I don't think people give him credit for, like being quite sarcastic with that thing. But going back to the Time Bandits, I think the combination of where to take that darkness in here is very interesting because it's not very dark, but it does have a really wonderful tone about serious discussions and about family and about neglect and also about growing up and becoming mature on all these levels. And I think, not to give this TV show more credit than it deserves, but like you said, seeing what we've seen from the creators of late, that's a slight panic for me in a sense of, you know, I think you've got to be in that world of a sound of mind and having your feet to the ground to have these sort of tales. Otherwise, they come off quite patronizing. I do think that's Clement here as well. I think Waititi's got the comedic down, but I think Clement comes in. This is Jermaine Clement as well. Comes in with the heart and soul here. So much so, and I was going to leave this for the end, but I'm going to mention this now. I enjoyed this so much. It reminded me of one thing that I think is very special to Taika Waititi, and that's Hunt for the Wilderpeople. And I watched that twice after this. I watched it once, and then watched it again straight away. And I adore that film. I think it's perfect, and it seeing the heart and soul in that, and then looking at this, they feel identical. And I've always missed that in Waititi stuff. And I think the episodic nature of him allowing to breathe. And yes, he's in this, and it's fun. Never totally like overboard. I haven't seen Our Flag on the HBO thing. I haven't seen that now. I'm going to watch that if I can do on someone's HBO account, my wife's. But yeah, I look at this and I think the 10 hours did worry me, but like you said, there's a perfect balance of going into this. Nothing's too harsh. Everything is very palatable, and I think it's easy to digest and just have its moments. But it's very rich, very textured, very emotive as well. It was just like a really wonderful time. And when this hits, it bangs. Like it's really funny, really silly and stupid. But it is one of those things that Gilliam's film did really well in balancing the children and the adult. And I think there's a choice in here that they make that's a very big risk with casting against what Gilliam did with his choice of cast. And I think, not to get in that right now, because if you want to go into anything else, but I think it's an interesting gamble this takes on that, because you're going to spend essentially 10 hours with a crew of adults that look like adults that are not that are somewhat stupid. And I think the subverted expectation of watching the Little People cast in Time Bandits sort of asks more about you as an audience, about expectation, about what you see of capability and what is disability, if that makes sense. I think we see someone who is like that, and we sort of expect to give like a form of pity. And I think Gilliam's film wonderfully subverts that and goes, no, this is not the film you think it is. These people are the smartest people because they want to run, they want to go on, they want to express, they want to do something with their lives. And disability or pity is nothing. It's not involved in this whatsoever. In Gilliam's film, and this, it's an interesting one because they don't go that avenue, and they very much put a lot on the shoulders of Kevin. So I was slightly worried going throughout that it would be a little bit too much weight on his shoulders. But how it's written for its 10 hours, I think it does a fabulous job of just absorbing us into this material.
No, I completely agree. And it's not just like there are these worthy moments of character, of talking about parents, especially, talking about love, talking about a lot in here. It's very rich, but also just some of the takes on like how it portrays history. I mean, a lot of it is for comedic effect, of course, and like, I cannot express enough. I think this might be the funniest piece of media I've seen this year. Maybe I'm neglecting something there, but like I really, every single episode was laughing out loud to this. But like in the first episode, they go to Stonehenge. They travel to Stonehenge, and as it's being built, and the take they have on that, and kind of it's weird because history is obviously like really cool, and in the show it's obviously a central part. That history is really cool, but also like demystifying some of it. I just thought like this show is doing so much more than it needs to, but I mean that in like the best of ways, where like I think when we both watched this trailer, we expected something very certain, right? We expected something
Hmm.
very light, something very stupid, to be honest. And what we got was something that was actually incredibly well crafted, both in comedy and in substance. It is something that has something to say, something somewhat new and bold to say at times. Specifically, I'm thinking about the conversations around history and how we portray history, how we think of history. um it's really, I mean, like, I don't know, it's hard to like, even with like the Paw Patrol films, I was like, oh, it's really fun and like I get it. Like, no, this is like there's something really quite substantial here. And I agree that I hope people watch it. I mean, I guess that's my major message. Like, please watch this show. I think you will enjoy it. I know they're
Hmm.
already writing season 2, and they're like, well, if people watch season 1, we'll do this. If not, we're gonna throw it in the trash, which is kind of sad. But like, I really think the show has something for everyone, to not just be like a fun light, oh, this is cute, but like add to Apple TV Plus's, as you mentioned, quite strong catalog of
Yeah.
really great shows. Um, and I just hope they continue to get subscribers and view it. Go for it.
I was just going to say about this might be a different angle to go on, but forgive me. I thought it was interesting that there was going to be a 10-hour TV show as well. I think that the film's not very long, and then when someone said, "Oh, we're going to announce it to a TV show," to me, I get like the red flag. I'm like, "Oh no!" Like, we can do this in 2 hours at least. And I think I was just genuinely worried about having to fight against that pacing and that momentum about, oh, now we're here, we're going to do the same thing. And I think what this place goes to like 6, 7 different places in time. None of it feels the same. Everything has an idiosyncratic type of feeling. The aesthetic change, the tone changes, the comments about society change, about culture. It's not a repetitive feeling of aesthetic or thematic either. There's definitely choices, like, there's a certain episode where they go back in time to somewhere else, and then they go back time to somewhere else. That's obviously the time bandits. That's the sort of the idea of the show. But they go to two very distinctive places about very two distinctive types of cultures, especially about race. Very interesting. It doesn't feel like a very much a vapid, um, one note conversation. There's like this individualism about it, and I think it does a really good job of expressing that through the 10 hours. Because in the TV show, excuse me, as a TV show, I think I'm not a massive proponent of watching long form television, like 10 hours of the same thing. I think you've got to have 6 hours really good stuff. Otherwise, 10 hours to me, I'm just watching someone eat food, and that's character development. Like, no, no, no. Let's have a bit of pacing. Although, if you enjoy stuff like that and you want to be with Tony Soprano eating, gabagool and stuff like that's to each their own. But here, it's a very different type of format where I just was quite worried that we just linger on 2 minutes or 3, 4, 5 minutes of um, uncomprehensive dialogue and ad libbing, but it's quite strict. It moves us on, and we get from A to B, and it feels like we get to a finish. And I think that long form television here, I think that's probably the biggest odds that this had about going and stretching itself. I think it did a really wonderful job on that way. But go on, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
Well, I'm actually gonna, before I get to what I was gonna say, I will say, you mentioned on Twitter that the kid in this should be Harry Potter,
Oh my god, yes.
which absolutely, I hope that show, and I hope just in general shows really look at this and will watch this and take lessons from this as far as storytelling, because like it's wild my expectations for like the Harry Potter show and then versus this. I'm like, oh, I really hope it takes like the whimsy and fun and the narrative structure of this. It absolutely won't. But he should be Harry Potter, to be very clear. That's a great point.
He's
But
outstanding
he's
in this.
fantastic.
Oh my god,
He's one of like the breakthroughs.
Yeah, I'll get onto that later because I've got so much to say about him. But yeah, go on.
Okay. I do want to say the one area of this that I started to lose myself, well, not lose myself, but I started to become a little bit less engaged with, was the overarching plot. Not to get into specifics, I'll say like the pacing of this is very weird, where it is mainly in the background. Most episodes, it really only comes in like the last 3 minutes. They'll hint at it, or they'll have little characters here and there pop up. But like, I always felt like I was really enjoying the ride. I was really there for it. And then it would cut to that, and I'm like, well, I'm not really interested in this. This is where Taika Waititi is. I don't know
Yeah.
if that says anything. He's fine. He's fine, to be clear. He's not. It's not bad. Not great. not as good as the rest of it.
Mhm.
I felt like even like towards the later half of the season, they start to introduce new elements, and it's just to the group, and I always just like that group. I always just wanted to be on that adventure, and when we pull away from that for any reason, whether it's a new character being added to it, whether it is a greater conflict that is taking away from that, I always felt like that is where the show started to become weaker, building to a conclusion, which we're not going to get into, obviously, but like, I will say, when this show ended, cut to credits at the end, did I feel as satisfied as I think I wanted to as far as the journey that we went on with these characters and how much I was enjoying it? Probably not. I think that's a minor issue, but I will say that is the one area where I would offer criticism, and I would say that is the part I would have cut down and probably not done.
I don't disagree with this, and I think this is the biggest complaint I have as well. Is where that's where it distracts itself from what the film is and what the thesis and of what this TV show is, and it tries to add a bigger mythology onto something that was quite rich and slim at best with the film. That overriding element of what that arc is about, or the all seeing being and stuff like that. It's important to the film, but it's very much the back burner. It's the we're going into the evil here. We're not going into that sort of aspect about the narrative in the original 1981 version, because I just don't think it needs to be spoken about too much, because it's very obvious what it is. We don't need specifics. Excuse me. And I think the film does a really good job of letting you have a sort of very much a one note idea of what that is. It could be God, it could be something else. It is what it is. This one feels like it has to expand on that to a degree where that's what they're sort of leading up to do next, I think. And there's two arcs in here. One with a certain time bandit that just gets lost, that I think we should probably speak about at the end, because I think that's got major repercussions of the actual production from what I've read. And then there's another arc here where two characters come in, and they're ultimately sort of a crime scene team. That to me was like, I was expecting that was going to be what our Time Bandit show was going to be about. It was going to incorporate elements of the original with I don't want to give anything, but two certain characters who, when you see them on screen, it's like, oh my god, that's my Time Bandits. And I think it's interesting how the intertwine that narrative and the Taika Waititi thing as well, because they're ultimately very much um, it's hard to say without expressing specifics, but they ultimately intertwine for the leading up episodes of what comes later. Um, Left with a question mark, of course, as well, which I think is brilliant. And for me, when to see the last few seconds before the credits rolled, I'm like, I cannot wait. But the thing about what that I don't know, I'll get onto that. There's a thing that slightly worries me about it, but we'll speak about it later. But I think it's interesting how those elements, you ask yourself, what are they there for? And to me, it's just world building to lead into another narrative. But I just think it's sort of excessive. Not necessarily the two characters I'm talking about. I think that was really interesting. I wish they were in it more. But the YTT thing, I sort of agree with you. Not only does it lose momentum, but it builds on a mythology in the show that doesn't really need to be. Um, well, I mean, it's not like it doesn't need to be discussed, but to me, it's sort of it wasn't interesting. I could rather just stay with Kevin. I don't need to know this higher power. I don't need to know the comedic routine. It's quite imperative that this person's in it, because there's certain things towards the end where we have to make choices, and I think that's probably the only reason. But I don't know. I get that the impression, because I'm not too on board with Waititi's comedic endeavors of late. It sort of just annoyed me. I just thought it was brash, and yes, it works for the character, but for me, the momentum just stopped. But I agree with you. It's a strange thing to why that's so imperative. Aside from obviously they've got round two, which feels like it's building up to that. Fair play, but I don't know. I just wouldn't have had that. It doesn't feel like it comes off comedically, like as essential. It doesn't come off narratively essential, aside from you building something upon it. But I suppose in 10 hours, you should really have this as one. I don't think it needs to have oh, we left that open. Just give it a full circle, and I think it did to a certain degree, but it's very much, oh, we're back here, where I'd rather be with Kevin and the Time Bandits. Oh, we're back here, where yeah, I'd rather be back with the Time Bandits. And I think the same thing happens with a certain villain here as well.
Yeah.
You just, go on, sorry.
Even when it comes together at the end, and even when like all these separate elements obviously come together for a conclusion, I found it just to be like a little bit underwhelming. I just found it to be like, I don't know, it was fine. It was not terrible to watch. I wasn't sitting there like, oh my God, they, screwed the pooch. This is a disaster. But I was just like, I don't know. I would not like, it's probably the weakest bit of the show, so it's, I don't know. It was there. It was fine. I don't know.
There's a Deus Ex Machina approach to screenwriting where I don't know, don't want to give the specifics, but we something happens where the audience are not very like aware of it, and it tries to make like a twist or a shock. And for me, just for a fan of the actual film, I'm like, oh, that's quite cool. But I think within the overarching feeling of a TV series as it is, it's quite anticlimactic, and I think that there's not enough time given to those those characters to make it worthwhile. And also, I think you then have the issue of detracting from the storyline, what we're talking about. So it's a difficult one, because if they put more emphasis on the support, we get taken away from the central narrative. But I think that within 10 hours, I still think you can do that. I think it needs to be tighter, because there's a little bit of repetition here, and there's a lot of like, let's just sit round and talk. And I think some of we're the comedic endeavor, especially when we get to a certain cold place. I think it's sort of like, oh, we've sort
That's
of done
the episode where it starts.
Yeah, we've done this, and I think it just probably just about suffices. But like you said, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I have the feeling that we'll have the sort of same idea, like let's just force him in, and we'll get this character in. I can't see where that goes, aside from we're going to do the same thing again. So yeah, it's the one thing where I don't find that engaging either. I'm like, oh, this will be interesting. I think that arc's done.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the other thing now.
It does feel like it's one of those shows, and a lot of shows face this in production, where like if you are making a show and you're hoping for a second season, but you're not confirmed for a second season, you kind of have to live in this purgatory, right? Where you're like not closing every door, you're setting stuff up. You can build to a second season, but you also have to make it to where like if it ends here, it's not a complete disaster. And I find that to be a really horrible place for narratives to lie, because it just doesn't work. Like you're just caught between a rock and a hard place, and it's not going to work out really. That's what I feel like this show in a lot of ways felt like, where they had these ideas and they wanted to get them out. They wanted to include them here, 10 episodes. Let's do it. So we've made our Time Bandits, but we also want to keep it open to keep going. It's just, for me, it felt like do a couple more passes. And ideally, I would say reduce it, condense it, focus it, make it to where this show stands. Boom. I think that's the better option than what they did. But again, I want to make it clear, like, I don't think that that's a disastrous element of the show. If you're watching at home, I think you'll be fine with it. I think you'll be a little bit underwhelmed, but I think you'll be fine with it overall. But in the context of the show, it is the one place where it's like
yeah. I also think with its episodic nature, it comes at a cost, because obviously it's 2 episodes a week, and you get your 90-minute fix, and then I think it does a really good job of balancing those 2 episodes until the final 2. Like you said, I think that it's quite short, quite because without going into specifics, of course, quite short. And to me, I think those will be difficult episodes to watch, because it leaves on a certain element of not ambiguity, but a ... Let's say ellipsis. Let's say an ellipsis. Or ellipses.
That's good.
Yeah, because the wife is listening again, so I've got to be careful. I've got to express myself clearly and adequately this time. But yeah, I have this idea that there's sort of these ellipses of it, and I don't mind that. But like you said, I think you've waited 2 episodes, and you get into this episode nature where it's so fun to be involved, and then we've got to now wait again. If this would be so much more thrilling to be like, let's get the block, let's get the block, and then whatever comes after, we can have that on. But let's just feel it's encased. And I think there's a lot of stuff like that where it becomes quite dangerous, because what's to wait for? What's enough to wait now 2 more years for kids who are maybe 8, 9, 10 watching this now? are we going to be 10, 12, 14 when this comes out, if it ever comes out? But then again, it'd be interesting to see the numbers of age range who are targeted here, because I think this is one of those shows where there's an intended audience and there's a target audience. I think the intended audience is to look at people who are like early 20s, and then the people who will love the film. But the target audience here, the intended target, should I say, are kids. And I hope it's accessible, and I hope that with the iPhone stuff you can get free. I think you get 6 months or 3 months for free. So there's definitely a work in there. And I think it's good bang for your buck to watch this anyway. And, I think one thing that I just would hope that this gets a physical release as well. It'd be nice to just sit through and burn through this again. We'll wait and see for that. I'm not necessarily too sure, but I think for 10 hours, it's really good fun.
I can see myself rewatching it for sure.
Oh yeah,
season
definitely.
2 is coming. Easy. It's an easy watch. I watched this in like less than a week. It was an easy.
I loved it. I watched it over 3 nights, I think. Watching it.
Yeah. I think the conclusion, maybe this is moving into kind of like movie versus show, because I think they're both good. I think they're both wildly. I mean, I think it's one of those cases where if you're a fan of the movie, I think you're going to get overall what you want here. I think you're going to be satisfied. You're not going to be like, oh my God, they're disrespecting the legacy. But they're also doing something very, very different here. I think that conclusion, like that's one of my favorite parts of the film, is the ending and how they bring everything together, even, and just how it wraps up, I think, very strongly. I think that's the one area where I wish the show would have taken a little bit more lessons from the original. But comparing just show and movie, I think they're two very different experiences. I probably honestly maybe prefer the show a little bit more.
I can see that. I can understand that. Yeah.
I would have to rewatch the movie again, but like, definitely both very fun. I think this is one of the better ones where it comes to like, if you watch this and love this, you can then watch the movie and it's going to be really enjoyable. If you like the movie, you're going to watch this and then it's going to be really enjoyable. I think this works really well in relation to its original media.
No, I completely agree. I think they have a harmony together, and I think there's two things about this. I think when they make a TV show out of a film, like American, the Paul Schrader thing with Richard Gere was made with John Bernthal, and nobody's seen it, but I know that's on Showtime. I think there's interesting way it works and the way it doesn't. With Time Bandits, like I said before, it felt like we're going to stretch this out, like really, because there's a lot of world building there, but it's a rich and quite expensive world to build within the medium of TV. But nevertheless, I think they achieve it. I think one thing to note that people going into this, and let's just this now, there's not going to be any acolyte response to this. It's not going to be like, how dare they do what they've done here. This is very respectful of casting, very respectful of skin tone, very respectful of colour, culture, all sorts of stuff. Society, it felt very much inclusive to watch on screen, especially with the tone and thematic of the narrative anyway. But I think that the one thing to know about the comparison with the television show and the film is that this is like a reimagining. It's not a remake. It's not a reboot. This is a reimagining of ripples and layers in the film. So they go to places where we've seen before. They go to places we haven't been before. In the TV show, we get to see certain other characters who are influenced by certain characters, like the Sean Connery of Time Bandits, and but there's no noble stars in this compared to Time Bandits. We're not going to see Michael Palin or John Cleese or Sean Connery. Very much keeps it within itself, and it doesn't go off the rails in that way. But it's expressive in its own right. The one thing I generally thought they would do, and they don't do this, I think it should be mentioned. This is totally different to the film. There's no, as of yet, from what I know, perhaps in season 2, there's no ripples and rhymes between the two. One is Time Bandits 2024, is a TV show, and one is Time Bandits 1981, and it's a film. There's no overarching, intertwined narratives here. And I did think at one point that there was like, oh, maybe we're gonna stitch them together. Maybe that's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna bring them together. I sort of was preoccupied halfway through to be like, am I noticing anything? Because this does story arcs that happened at the end of the film in the first episode. So it very much gets you off the couch and thinks like, oh, well, they're not going to do the same thing here, because the emotive arc of how that ends in the film is the one bleeding, nasty effect of just the bleakness of Time Bandits. Here it does it in like the first episode, and I was like, wow, like, where are we going to go with this thing? Because we've got like 9 hours left, and it does a really good job of exploring that and just going on an adventure. And it's a perfect excuse to really drag everything out. And I don't say that in a derogatory term. I just think it's really good to just drag it out and have a look. But they very much are two different entities. I did hope a little bit that they would merge them, and I think maybe in time that'll be answered, because season 2 could be quite interesting. But there's a lot of people who've passed away from that point of view, and so on and so forth. And I don't think Gilliam is very responsive to that. Although Handmade Films had got a credit in this, which I think was very interesting. It seemed as though they've been sold and on and on and on, and so on and so forth. But yeah, don't go into this as a hardcore Time Bandits fan and expect the same thing. It's just an expressive, more whimsical. Not, I wouldn't say childlike. I think it's more of a whimsical take. And I think that's sort of the beauty of it. That a little film in England by an auteur director, which nobody really saw at the time, has been taken on by a group of New Zealand comics, sold to Apple TV, and now it could blow up to the next big thing. And I hope it does find a home, and I do hope it blows up to the next big thing. But I did want to talk about this kid in it. So look, children actors get shit on in television and film. Oh, like it's like you've got your Jake Lloyds and so on and so forth, and that little kid out of like Avengers Endgame and so on and so forth. There's sort of this vitriol on about kid expressions or child performers to a point where it's actually criminal that what people say. I've always looked at child actors and given them benefit of the doubt. I think the young girl in Pet Sematary, the remake, is very good. And I think Jake Lloyd's fine in Star Wars, but there's always this cost of, a childlike mentality is different to a on-screen childlike presence. And I think this nails what it's like to be a kid who doesn't really have a place to call home. Like, yeah, he lives with his mom and dad and his sister, but it's not really home to him. It's not somewhere like it's comforting. It's not somewhere that he can find solace. He goes to his bedroom and he explores his imagination. And I think to find that whimsical lore of being really old ahead of your time, but just being not egotistical about it, just being a kid, I think it was perfect. And I have to say, like, because his name's Kal-El as well, which I thought was quite fun. Is it Kal-El? It's Kal-El Tuck. I don't know if he's a New Zealander or he's a Brit. It's very much limited information on him, and I don't want to be searching for children's age on my phone or anything. But I thought he was magical in this. The first 10 minutes, I was like, "You've got me. Don't let me down here," because he's so good at tone, emotion. He's great at pause and reflect. His timing's perfect. He has camaraderie with people 40 to 50 years ahead of his age, and he's there. He's within 5 comedic actors on screen, and he's there all the time. He never gets lost. And I think the one thing about Gilliam's presence is that by casting little people against the child actor there, not only is it a thematic interest, because they're all on the same wavelength, and the audience sort of, again, like I said, there's a perspective of the audience thinking like it's a disability, and they take it on their own stride and make whatever the audience can pity on them, they make it this expression. But the one thing about Gilliam said that it was great to light everyone at the same height. It was great to get the line in, the eye line there. The camera didn't have to be changed too much. You didn't have to go up and down. This one I thought was interesting, that constantly how they had to then go to Kevin's perspective and then go to the Time Bandits perspective. Small instances of where it had to change, and it didn't really change anything for me at all. But I just thought that it was interesting that the camera sort of like always looks down at Kevin, and then we never look up. I just thought it was very interesting that the TV show didn't quite get that, but alas, I think this kid's performance is sensational. How he acts, and I know the glasses and the long hair don't really help, but how he acts was like, if HBO Max or Warner Bros. Are not on the phone being like, let's get the kid for a screen test, it will be one of the most monumental, underused controversial castings that's never happened ever if they don't cast this kid as Harry Potter. Like I don't know how old he's going to be if it went into production, but he just nails it. He's got everything about it. He's got a charisma. He's got like a flamboyance. But he's still retained being a kid in this. It never left the screen about. We never forget that Kevin's a kid because there's a lot of adult stuff here. There's a lot about mortality and morality and ethics and empathy, and the show never once forgot that Kevin was like 11-year-old kid. Never. I think it's so understandable to get that and be like, when kids watching this, they're gonna never look at him as someone who's aged. He still has this whimsical, absorbent nature to him about going on all these escapades. Like he's growing, but he's not maturing in a way like, oh, he's like going on 18. He's maturing in a way that's like, oh, I'm getting to see all these things. How do I become a person like that? How do I become a better person? His relationship with his family changes, his relationship with other people, how they then respect him changes. I just thought it's really well done, but primarily focused on how good he is. And he really, like, seriously, like, I cannot express, like, I just hope that when the reviews start pouring into this kid gets the flowers because he's fucking brilliant. And I do apologize for swearing there, but it's so good. I'm like, I just kept watching for hours. Like, I never found it annoying, and never found his like energy for being interesting or engaging about how, like, even just the writing from his perfect. And I don't know. I just like I just find that those things so difficult to cast and so difficult to get, and it hinges so much on this kid, this Kal-El, child actor, to be this good. Because if not, I think you're just watching a child with some adults, and the dynamic's strange and off. This nails it. I mean, he's superb in this. He really is.
Yeah, I mean, and dare I say, when Taika Waititi has a project, probably the best part of nearly each one, well, one of his strengths, I think, is both writing and casting child characters. I mean, from Hunt to the Wilder People, as you mentioned, Jojo Rabbit has fantastic kids in it. He just knows how to find kids that are really good at acting and then write them really well. I mean, every single part of this production, from the screenplay to the supporting characters to the kid himself, it knows how to balance that, as you mentioned, him being a kid, undeniably as a kid, but also giving him the main character, giving him the strength, giving him those moments. It really is a balance that just works incredibly well. And that's something I see in every single, nearly one of his films. Outside of the children in Thor, Love and Thunder, I think that's pretty untouchable for Taika. So I think that is undeniable here. And I agree. He is like, I mean, as with everything in this film or in the show, like, the craft he gives to his character with timing and with presence and with everything is so well done. He's undeniably, I think, a highlight. And I just hope he, we have this weird like ensemble of like 20 incredible child actors right now that are just like killing it. And they're like, wow, these are like the best actors working today. I hope he gets roles. I hope he's one of those that don't just like die off and we never see him again outside of Time Bandits, because I hope he gets a really great career. And I agree, he'd be great as Harry Potter. HBO.
I think his sister, on screen sister, like Keira Thompson, is really good here as well. And I think that's the one where that's sort of it's quite conscious of how they write this his sister in a way that obnoxious but very awkward teenage years, very like becoming to be a teenager, taking who she is as a person and stuff like that, and having to deal with school at that age is horrible. Especially as a young girl in like Northern England, which these people are from, is like, it's fucking brutal. I mean, just going to school in England's brutal. But especially like having Kevin as a younger brother, you could probably argue that he's more he comes from like an elder statesman point of view. Like he's more educated, he's more more adult oriented, and then she's the younger sister, and there's an interesting change about that in the show, which I thought was quite fun. And then that's quite dark as well, that no one even talks about that thing in this show. But we'll leave that for the surprise. But I thought she was brilliant. I thought she has like a certain episode in this, because she's very much side quest, and then she becomes a third party almost, and she becomes, well, she becomes more central to the TV show. And they give her like an episode, and she's really good. Like it's you get the obnoxiousness, you get that it's all face, it's all surface, I thought how that was written and how they come together, and I just thought it was really well done as well. Um, it's very English. I know I'm going to repeat that, but it's very English. I think they nailed that. How she has like slang, and I know it's shot in England. Some of it's shot in England. I think some of it's shot. You can tell the opening is shot in New Zealand, or at least because I just felt like the brickwork is different. I know that sounds really strange, but on the side of the school and the field, that's not England. Grass has never been that green in England, I can tell you. But I just thought she was really well cast as well, and she makes a print in this film. She makes a stance. Really good screen presence, really good flamboyance, and every time they ask a little bit too much of these child actors, and I don't want that to come to condescending. I think a child actor is just it's not necessarily something to be patronizing or condescending at all. But there becomes a certain weight with it, an expression and about the ability. No, everything that's asked about these two, they pretty much nail. Like there's nothing here where I was like, oh, maybe they could have done this, maybe they could have done that. No, there's an episode directly about emotional connection here, about family, towards the end, and that's really well done. Both of them have separate storylines that are very different. One's like weirdly heartbreaking, and the other one's like weirdly entertainingly fun, and then becomes heartbreaking. And there's really good material here for them to express themselves, and I think this is a really good calling card. It's a very big project as well. I hope that people see these two kids and give them the flowers, give them a bit of plaudits. Let's see some positivity on the Twitter sphere and the X sphere rather than damning them. I think I know there's a lot here. There's a lot good. Lisa Kudrow's fun, but I think it should be noted that the expectation and conviction of these two kids in this film. This I keep on saying film. Sorry, this 10-hour long episodic TV show is pretty much brilliant.
And they're not. I mean, you'll see when you watch this. They're not in the background. I mean, they are, especially towards the end, the driving figures in this, and they absolutely carry, I think, every single expectation and challenge put upon them very well. Well, I think that's going to do it for our season 1 of Time Bandits review on Apple TV Plus. The first 2 episodes, if you're watching this right when it's posted, will drop tomorrow. Then weekly episodes through the end of August. I think we both recommend you obviously watch the show. Definitely one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. I believe it is also for you, Jack. So with that, let's get to our question of the week, because this is, I think, again, a show I would fall in love with as a child.
Yes.
I think a lot of children really enjoy this. I just wanted a fun question of the week. What is a childhood TV show you loved? What was a show when you were a child that you really enjoyed? And I would love to hear your answer for it.
Right, you brought trauma out of me this week, and the next 10 minutes here is going to be quite difficult for me to get through because I've got serious trauma. Now, Sunshine is my wife. If you're listening, she's going to sort of piss herself listening to this because it's like a mutual joke. She finds it really funny. I don't. I find this terrifying. There was a show on the CBBC, which is like a kids program when I was little, called The Ghost Hunter, right? And I used to watch it, and it used to begin where like it was in like in this field, and there was a woman with a big cloak on with like a lantern, and she'd be walking across like the field. I will send you this afterwards. It's frightening, and the audio used to go Ghost Hunter, and it used to have like this audio like doom doom doom, really scary stuff. And it was this is where it gets off the rails. She was collecting ghosts and put them in jars, and she was like the woman who lived in this small village, and there was a ghost going missing who was like an 18th century Victorian shoe cleaner kid, and he would like go into their house and he'd be like, she's hunting me, and he'd see her doing it in the middle of the night, and I don't know, she's like this, she was like a school principal or something, she was doing it, and I swear to God, even now listening to the like, I have trouble watching the introduction of it. So that's one, and the other one, and there's like a theme here why I don't like horror films, or why I didn't like horror film for a long, long time because of these two fucking things. The next one, right, and nobody talks about this. I always think it's like a Mandela effect. I'm like, why has no one ever heard this? It's called, I don't even know if it's called Jeopardy. Now stay with me. Jeopardy, right? It's not what you think. It was about 4 backpackers from, this is fucking scary. This is a BBC kids show, right? 4 backpackers from Scotland who go to Australia backpacking, and they get abducted by aliens, and then they all get separated. Australia, if anyone knows Australia, it's quite a large country, and it's all about them trying to find each other again. And the local Aussies are like skeptical of it, and then some of them know a little bit more. And I remember like just one image burned to my head. I can't remember if it's from this or Taken, the Spielberg Toby Hooper thing, about them getting on a large train, a cargo train throughout Australia, and then they just get taken up. And I swear to God, it used to be like episodic. I'm getting like goosebumps watching this because this is like proper to me. This, I remember it used to be episodic, right? But I never was able to watch it week after week. So I'd watch like week 1, then a week 7 and have no idea. So it added so much confusion, and like the mysticism of it all, like was like, heightened for me. I've never ever found anyone who's seen it, and it's the same thing. I found it on Wikipedia because every so often I have to like, it's real, Jack. It's real. You know, the Ghost Hunter can't hurt us, but this is real, and no one's ever seen it. I think it's on YouTube, and it's like didn't do very well. There's only 2 seasons of it, but it was horrifying for the time, horrifying. But that and Ghost Hunter, I will send you the Ghost Hunter clip after this, and even you will be like, "That's frightening." So those are my 2, but definitely like, yeah, definitely staples in my child. Like why I wouldn't want to watch horror movies for the longest time, because they were quite gripping in ways that were quite uncomfortable for me to go to sleep on.
Yeah. You guys have some interesting children's content across the pond. Actually, stuff is adding up a little bit more now, but
yeah, it's
that's concerning,
up.
Honestly. As mentioned, I love animal shows, and there's this one I was obsessed with. I loved this like genre of like 2000s media, which was like this someone going back in time and there's CGI dinosaurs. And I loved this one called Prehistoric Park, hosted by Nigel Marven and Icon, where he would go back every week and he would get a dinosaur and bring it back and put it in his zoo. Not quite as scary as yours and not quite as haunting, but I loved that show so much, and I was heartbroken when it ended and it didn't get a season 2. I love that show so much. So mine would be Prehistoric Park. Shout out Apple TV Plus bringing back that genre of show with their show Prehistoric Planet, I believe it's called. I don't know why as CGI got better, everyone just was like, we're done creating CGI dinosaurs in shows. Bring it back, please. Apple, good on you. With that, let's go to our rapid reviews. Anything we've seen recently that we haven't talked about on the podcast. Boy, I don't have much, but let's get into it. I saw 2 Ozu films because I'm I'm continuing my exploration of Japanese cinema. I saw The Only Son, 1936, which was quite emotional. Definitely one that's interesting to chew on, considering there's both cultural divides and also just time divides between how this movie is viewing certain political things and how we would view them now. But I thought it was really fascinating. An Autumn Afternoon, the last film he ever made. Messy but very emotional. I wish I saved it to be the last one. I think if you watch his entire filmography and you watch this, he takes pieces from a bunch of different films and put them together. Thought that was really worthy. I watched Kurosawa's Dreams finally, which my God, one of the most visually stunning films I've seen in a while. Not at all what I expected.
I've seen it at the cinema.
Yeah, you're lucky.
Spectacular, yeah.
Martin Scorsese playing Vincent Van Gogh. Never thought I would see it, but boy, did I love watching it. And then finally, I'm not going to get into it because our next episode is going to be completely about the film. I watched Twisters. All I will say is not a 2024's biggest disaster. Maybe its biggest disappointment, though.
Wow.
We'll get into it, but I was very kind of like sitting there. Honestly, I started feeling a little depressed watching it.
Wow.
I was like, oh, I wish I didn't watch this because then I could always just be excited for it and not kind of have to like accept with what it is. I retweeted on Twitter like a 7-minute behind the scenes footage of the original, and I'm like, I just want that. Just why couldn't you give me that? Why did you have to do CGI, guys? Come on. But we'll get to that next episode. Jack, what have you seen recently?
Well, I haven't watched a lot. Within my, if I can able to say that with an honest face, in building up for Longlegs, which I'm going to talk about last, I have watched a few bits. I think I watched Hunt of the Wilder People after this, and I just like it just got my fix again. I watched that twice. Like I just love watching that film. I love being in that experience. It was like Time Bandits. It was just so much fun. I went to go watch Double Bill with Longlegs, and I went to go watch A Quiet Place Day One after Double Bill. That had no reason to be as good as it was. The director, there's not much like lineage between that and Pig, which I thought was slightly strange. It felt like I'm going to go for my commercial work now and do what I want next. which I think is a really good idea. Um, it's probably about 10 minutes too long. There's like a scene with Joseph Quinn where like we tried to do aliens, and I was like, oh, I don't need to do this. The cat was amazing. Lupita was fantastic. There's a heart and soul in here that's devastating. It does feel slightly predictable in its last 10 minutes. I think it has to feel a bit more earnest and a bit more heartfelt than I think the actual devastation of this what it could be, because there's like a poignant beauty to this about in the face of death carrying that with you, knowing that like we're trying to survive, what reason to do so. um Very good like sound effects. It does become like a CGI fest at the end, but it wasn't too bad. um very dark 9/11 type of aesthetic and atmosphere as well with certain sequences. Like I said, the emotion was good. The one thing I had really bad criticism with it is that we open up with Lupita Nyong'o's character, who obviously has got a lot of the emotional weight, but we sort of just Joseph Quinn just sort of, I don't know if anyone has seen it, but Joseph Quinn just sort of turns up, and they're like there's this trauma that he's got about water, which if you watch how he turns up in the film, it becomes one and one. But it's become apparent that this is not a spoiler, that they didn't put in that he was going there to kill himself, and that's why I thought like, but we don't get to see any of the trauma before him just showing up, and it's after the attacks anyway. And I thought they were going to do a thing where we'd split screen them parallel stories of how we find them, their day to day, because the Beata Nyong'o's in a hospice. She's got like stage 4 cancer. There's just nothing worth really living for except for the small moments. Like I thought it was really tender, but how it doesn't sort of integrate Joseph Quinn into that, and he just turns up. His finality to that character was strange, and to then say, "Oh, he was going there to like kill himself," I was like, okay, but like that would have been really good to intertwine with how Lupita was feeling and what is to live for at the end. I don't know. Now on to Longlegs. So, um, I did go on the Oz Perkins marathon. I've got one more tonight. I watched Gretel and Hansel. Thought I thought it was spectacular. So like low budget but artistically proud. Perfect sort of fairy tale, Grimm brother fairy tale. Haunting, daunting, frightening, terrifying, uncomfortable. Gives you as much as you need and leaves a lot for you to decipher. I thought Sophie Lillis was good. She hasn't done a lot. I haven't seen her in the Amy Adams thing, Sharp Objects. I have seen her in that Nancy Drake thing where she's a detective. Watched that AMC Theatres day one because I am a stan. No, I'm not. I think I had AMC Plus there. It was a free ticket, but she was very good in it. I think it was very good. I did then go back to watch. I have to get this right because it's called February in your country, but it's called The Black Cut's Daughter in mine. Have you seen this?
Yes, I have.
I thought it was outstanding. So simplistic and just very much like Pulp Fiction and its day, or Reservoir Dogs, takes a formula and just twists certain things in a narrative sense to make it just so much more compelling. Oh my god! Like, there's like he has. I said this. I was going to say this to you privately, but I don't mind saying it. It would not surprise me if it came out that Osgood Perkins was into some serious like weird shit, like the Arnie Hammer thing. Because there's like this bookends weirdly similar to the film I'm going to talk about next, almost to the dialogue. And if they're interconnected or anything like that, that's cool. Nothing's been confirmed like that, but this feels like very much like a prologue to Longlegs. I'm glad I didn't see it first, but this was fucking brilliant. I love this. I have got one more to go after, which is I'm the pretty thing that lives in the house. I've heard mixed things compared to, but I really love Black Coat. February, I thought it was outstanding. The actress in here, Kiernan Shipka, is that how you pronounce that?
I do not know.
Well,
So I'm going to say yes.
I'll take one for the team there. Outstanding. God, she is good. I've seen her in lots of stuff, but like she's in Twisters as well, which I'm excited to talk about when we talk about that. She's been in all sorts of shit. Like she was in Land of the Lost, The Silence, which I thought was terrible with Stanley Tucci. She was in Carriers with Chris Pine. She's been around forever, and I know that she was in a TV show. Is it Sabrina? Like she's been in a lot of stuff, and like she's coming into like a Scream Queen now, and I'm here for it. I think she's extraordinary. But onto the big one. I was shocked that we didn't do a podcast about this, but in the same token, I think that we spoke about it. I think what needs to be said about it's been said. I agree with you. I think it's taken such like it'd have been good for clicks, but at the end of the day, I just think it's the promotional campaign for this has been so strong and so diluted now. I don't really want to talk about it again after this. But I did watch Longlegs, and I posted my review of it, which after Maxine was like, "Woosah, we come at this different angles. I know that you liked it, but you didn't love it for reasons, and I think that's totally valid after watching the film. I fucking love this film. I'm going to tell a story here, right? I wanted to go watch A Quiet Place Part 1 first at 11:25 a.m. And then I wanted to go watch Longlegs second because I knew that Longlegs would be tough. The 2 o'clock showing, right, of this, because of is packed on a Tuesday afternoon. Packed. That does not happen here, right? That does not happen. Packed. I was like, shit, I'm gonna have to watch this first. So I went for the 11:55 showing. Got there, packed. Right at 11:55 a.m. packed. There was 4 people in A Quiet Place. 4. This had like 60 people in. It was full of old age pensioners, Carson, and to the viewers, full. There was about 6 of us who were like under 30, because I am under 30 for everyone out there, and 2 of them sat in front of me and they just slated everything. They called like the Andrew Bocelli like a creep or something. I was like, "What do you want about? Why can't we just watch the film?" And like as soon as like the opening comes up, they both shit themselves and just stop talking. Thrilling, insipid, sorry. Dark, brutal, unnerving. There are creative decisions here with Cage that will make or break the experience because it goes there. And then people are adding more context to say that it's plastic surgery to make him look like something that he's making in the film. Why don't we say that in the film? I don't know. There's a lot more that's adding to the fire here. What it didn't say was really good. Watching this on a second viewing is going to be fascinating because there's a lot of like, father, and there's a lot of like visual bleeding of this film. Monroe is sorry, it's not Monroe, is it? Is that yeah? It is, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, I always think Marilyn, but it's Monica. Yes. So Monroe is fascinating here. She's been out of the limelight for me for about 10 years since It Follows. I haven't seen The Watcher. I haven't seen the other stuff that she's done. By Twitter's stands, she's been excellent at everything. So I'm going to watch a few films with her in. She's fascinating in this. I think the idea of trauma and having something over you that you can't quite touch and you can't quite discuss, but it's there, is so thrilling to watch in her performance. The aesthetic, the visual composition of constant things in the background that could be there, especially like she's just sat on a chair on a phone, and we have like this wide frame, and the doorway's there, and like there's gonna be something there, there's gonna be something there. How it plays with your expectation of convention is brilliant. If that's conscious or not, I think like the guy Oz Perkins knows everything. It does go to a certain angle, doesn't it? In degree of tone, and like it's going to lose a few people, I think. But the ending to me is like really interesting. How we talk about that and what that leads to, I don't know. Cage, from the opening minute where we see something of him, and remember you said he needs to be stopped. I was like, I think he may have got me here. I think like I believe in Carson. Like I don't think this is going to be very good, and I think that the limitation of that character on screen is more the benefit. When it does turn up for the big moment, it's like Nicolas Cage doing John Travolta in Face Off, trying to do Look Who's Talking, John Travolta, as Nicolas Cage in Longlegs, and it's very much goes for it. I don't know if it hits it. I think the film would probably have been better with an actor of a caliber. And I don't say this on reason, but I just think like Keanu Reeves would have done a very good job here. I've seen the subverted expectation of what can be horror. I think that would work better in the expectance of seeing this person on screen. Because Perkins has said it was him or Brad Pitt. Now, regardless of what you think about Brad Pitt, that feels weirdly more akin to being like terrifying to see what he could do. Tom Cruise, like just someone so big but subvert the expectations. Because I think with Cage, I don't think he does anything that you didn't expect him to do. Same to me. I think what you get is what you get, and it'll work. But it very much was like, oh, that's grim. That's weird, and he plays with it very well, I suppose. But definitely like a thrilling experience. It stayed with me. The comparisons to Silence of the Lambs, I think, are cute. They are probably earned, if I dare say that. I think they are. It is the version of Silence of the Lambs now. Where else do we? I don't even think there's anything else to touch upon. I think that's really it. I would be interested if you'd ever watch that again. I don't want to get into. I don't want to like derail this and say it's a long list review. But
no, you're good.
Would you ever watch this again?
I liked it. I definitely would watch it again. My prediction though is that it would be worse on a second watch.
Wow.
But I do. I would watch it again. Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know. I think it'll elevate it, but it'll take the mysticism out. And I think I like the fact that this is like a fucking horrible dream I had.
Right.
Like it's blurry now in my head, but like I can still make out the fucking terror of it.
It's scary. It's definitely one of the like. It's genuinely scary at times. I think my biggest thing with on a rewatch is like I agree. I would appreciate more of the little things Oz Perkins puts in, but already on a first viewing, there were like jumps in logic that I didn't like. Like I think you get a lot of it you can put to the side as you're just trying to understand what is happening and you're trying to keep up with it. I think when you know what's happening and you're really able in full context to analyze everything on screen, I feel like there are going to be elements that fall apart. I mean, I think specifically even like the stuff with the guy she is working with and certain things that lead up to the conclusion, not to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but like there were choices there that I was very frustrated by in the moment. And I just see that getting worse with a second watching. But I also agree that there would be little bits here of trauma, of talking about stuff with her mom, for example. Not to spoil anything, but like that would be more worthwhile. But I just don't think it would be. I like it as a singular experience. I agree. It was this kind of like descent down into like hell for a second, and then I come back out. I don't need to do that over and over again.
Agreed. No, I agree. I think the logic thing, I think a lot more people are talking about that on Twitter and after the release, and I think I've seen a lot of reviews relate to that. And I think this film gets by that just by the skin of its teeth because it's on theme, it's on tone, it's on, vibe. I know that's like a derogatory statement to make, but it very much is like I said, we're on a descent here, and the vibe of that is so terrifying that those logics, like, how did she do that? And then, because of this at the end, I'm like, okay, like, I think you just survive it. But no, it is an interesting experience to have it. The one thing I do think is interesting about that promotional campaign, though, like, I don't know. Like, I think that it's used its how do I explain this? I think it's actually used one of its negatives as its positive by not showing Cage, because I think that is one of the things where there's a generation out there who love this guy. Like Nick Grasso, like will die for him. Like he watched all that shit that he's done, like Pay the Ghost, all that shit. I can't do that. I like the guy. I can't do that. I just won't do it. And I've watched the Toxic Avenger this morning as well, which I was gonna leave for next week, but I've seen that as well. Jesus. But I'll watch a lot of stuff. But I find that there's a generation who will eat that up, but will eat the meme, not appreciate what he's doing. Then there's another audience who detests that, who don't want that shit. And I think this does a really thin, and I mean thin line between those two experiences of, and I think you fell in that, and I think I did as well, about it's just enough. Because any more, and we're memifying it, and any less, I'm like, it's really worked because the promotional campaign's been so less like exploitative of him. Well, no, because if they put him on every poster, the film doesn't work because there's no there's no like mysticism, and also there's no anonymity with that character. And but like by showing him too much, it would just burn into my skull. So I do like aspects of it. Where we go from like here, I don't know, of Oz Perkins. Like I just hope he does like weird little shit things like that. Not shit things, but I think he does like weird, just crawl under your skin flicks like this, rather than going and doing like, I'm going to remake Psycho now, or like just stuff like that. We don't need it,
Yeah. I mean, I think the one undeniable hype for this is like, this is the biggest like stage he's had, and it still is undeniably an Oz Perkins film. I am very, curious about The Monkey next February. That's his next one based on the Stephen King short story. I don't know anything about the short story. I'm very curious to see how he works with a King adaptation specifically in a world that is not his own per se.
Oh yeah.
But we will see next February. I mean, we might talk about it on the podcast. We'll see. But
Yeah.
definitely, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. And we've mentioned it with multiple filmmakers. We'll talk about it kind of negatively with a filmmaker in our next episode, is when you get a big stage, if you can maintain your unique voice and your unique ambition, whether it's good or bad, I will appreciate you as a filmmaker a lot more, and I will have a lot more hope for you, and I'll buy into a lot more. So I think Oz Perkins wins there. Look, I mean, like, I think you can discuss the Nicolas Cage side of this. I think you can discuss the past decade of Nicolas Cage, and it's like what a wild ride as far as like how films have chosen to use him. The unbearable weight of massive talent on one spectrum, Pig on the other spectrum. It's been a rough. I'll be honest, for me, it's been a really rough decade, and I like Nicolas Cage overall. Can't deny the marketing for Longlegs worked, right? In one weekend, it was like the highest grossing film Neon's ever had combined, or it was like number 3, I think, on the list.
Yeah, really good.
I think it's just behind Parasite. In one week, and it outgrew the entirety of Ferrari. Say what you want about that, but like it happened, right? So like, good on Neon for getting a big hit on their hands, and I think a lot of people are going to this. And I'm not hearing a ton of backlash. How I thought I was going on a first viewing. I think back to like when It Comes at Night. I think it's called, debuted in like 2016 or 17 or whatever, and everyone watched that trailer and expected something certain.
Yes,
got something very different, which I like what it was a lot. I really like that film, but everyone's like pissed, and it was like major backlash because it wasn't what it sold itself to be. I don't think Longlegs is necessarily what it sells itself to be, but I'm not hearing that backlash, which is good. I think this is definitely becoming like a little bit of a horror moment. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to revisit after The Monkey. I think probably after I'll wait until I see The Monkey, and then I'll revisit it. And I think it'll be interesting to watch. But I'm definitely happy, it's getting its moment, and it's good. I mean, I enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, it justifies its means, doesn't it? Like it's one of those things where it gives you enough conscious, like even within the film, like there's something there, is there? Whereas like the trailer with Schultz thing, In Comes at Night, like it's just like that's all to the audience perspective. This is more like conscious than the subconscious. But it's interesting that we spoke last week about I think it was last week, about Maxine and A24 doing bits with the box office and Neon. It's interesting how those two are gonna heat up, and out of the two of them, it's incredibly interesting to see about the promotional campaigns, which these two things rest on. But in the same token, right, I have to say, the reason why these two production companies with these two specific films are making money is not because of your production campaign or your promotional campaign. It's because you put them in fucking theaters. That's how you're going to make money. Don't just slice them away and be like, oh, there you go, you have that. Or sell them on. Put them in a theater. Put them in for like 8 weeks. Let them build up momentum. Granted, you've got Cage here, and the promotional campaign works to it. But the next thing I see that's low budget or something like that, I want to see it in theaters. I thankfully got to see these both at the View, which is brilliant. But this is the same View which was like had 2 screenings of Midsummer. And it's like, oh, what? I want to see these these features. Don't hide them away, because I get the impression now that once they've sort of solidified themselves of statesmen in within the production company hierarchy, which they undoubtedly have now, that they're going to have to escape from we've got a film here and only a few people have seen it, and we're going to get some good reviews, and then we're going to sell that on for the idea of what we're going to make next. And they're doing a very different type of view of what Canon did. Canon made a film through promotional, sold it onto foreign territories, got the budget, made it for half of it, took the other half, done it, and that's how they built up. These people are doing the same thing, but they're just keeping the film weirdly to themselves, not giving it a great deal of promotion and push, and letting film fans get into the cult mentality of, oh my god, A24 have got a film on the slate, A24 have got a film on the slate, Neon. I don't want that. I'm not here for the FOMO bullshit. If you're not going to show me the film, I ain't going to see it, then that's on you. That you've just lost me. You've lost a reviewer. You've lost a critic. But you've also lost Joe Blow and Mary Lee on the side of the street looking at the theatre and be like, oh, what's that? Let's go watch it. You're just losing all those average audiences by just not getting it out, Just because you previewed at TIFF or at South by Southwest and then no one's seen it, that's a detriment. That's not a positive. So I just hope that's the next sort of curve now. But Go watch Time Bandits. It's on Apple TV Plus. It's all there. It's all going to be there. No one's going to stop you there. There's no fucking ad breaks. Go watch.
That's true.
Go watch. Young Kal-El playing Kevin, who's sensational. And just have some fun in a world of what you said. I know to tangent here, but in a world where like we're having a horror moment, it was quite nice to have a reprieve and be like, "Whoa!" It was a lovely detox within a world that's quite grim at the moment. You know, turn on CNN or turn on BBC News. If you're into that, if you turn on Fox, no, I don't hold you accountable, but you know, there's a sort of a judgment there. You know, it was nice to have just a bit of positivity in a world that was bleak. So yeah, it was also really lovely to watch. I think that's part of the experience as well.
It's weird when projects are good, when there's like craft, when there's care, where there's love, where there's effort. All the genres, they like work together. It's really weird to see, isn't it? Where like you can have a really good horror movie, but then going and watch Time Bandits is a lovely cool down. And then I'm sure an adventure movie and a mystery, like, it's weird how it all works together when things are good. So I don't know, maybe make good movies and shows and I will support it and I'll have a great time.
Crazy.
And just know, I would recommend you get Apple TV Plus because that Napoleon 4-hour cut is coming. And I'm sure after Time Bandits, you know what you're going to want to do? Take a page of the original Time Bandits and go watch that. I think we will be the only ones streaming that, unfortunately, but that's okay. And Apple TV Plus, keep going because you're doing great, buddy. Well, I don't know. You've released Argyle, so
whoa,
ups and downs. I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Go watch Time Bandits, everyone. Jack, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on X or Twitter. And Letterboxd with the username @JackLukeSharp, and you can find me on Clapper with the same username. Just dropped my Horizon review. I really liked it. We are gutted about part 2. And this is like we're not going to go into this because it would be unfair on even talking about long legs on a Time Bandits podcast. But that's brutal to find that out. I'm hoping I've heard from different sources that it's a pause. It's not a cancellation. So I'm there. I have a review for Beverly Hills Cop 4 coming out soon. Whenever I get time to edit it and yeah, the good stuff. Yeah, just release your review. Was it a Maxine as well? Or is that it? Yeah, go read that. Great stuff.
Yeah, Horizon's sad. We're not going to get into it, but like I haven't even seen Horizon Part 1, and I really want to. But now I'm like, it was so sad. We almost did a emergency Clappercast talking about the state of cinema. We had the troops rallying, ready to go. It's sad though because it's not just like I want to watch Horizon Part 1. And I know we're going to get Horizon Part 2. It's done, right? Yeah. They're going to release the film. They're not just going to like let it die.
Part 3 is done as well.
Okay, that's good to know because I'm more worried about Part 4. I'm more worried about, am I going to enter this world, spend 12 hours in it, and then not have a conclusion? I'm excited for Part 1. I'm going to watch Part 1, but it's scary. Why is everyone laughing about an original film genre piece not succeeding? Isn't it like horrifying that our industry cannot support that at all? And like they have to, this film that was like the conceit of it was meant to kind of like try to bring theatrical life back, now has to like just accept streaming and work towards streaming and like just give itself up to that. Isn't that like, I don't know,
I thought it was very
haunting? Isn't that sad?
Yeah, I thought it was a very
depressing.
It's a response online from it. It's like, oh, Welp. I'm like, why are we like the guy put his own money into this? Like, think of what you want. Like, have a bit of like, you know, I don't know. I agree with you. I don't get
what the joke is. Are we like, haha, he had ambition and he tried to make a theatrical genre film?
Yeah.
Is that, how dare he? What a loser.
Yeah, that's what a strange angle. Yeah, I agree.
Like, it's all financed. He did like, I don't know, whatever. We're not going to get into it, but it was one of the more baffling things I've seen on the internet this year. You can find me on Twitter at BP_movie reviews, tweeting like semi-mean comments about people not liking Horizon. And you can find my Letterboxd Carson Tamar. A busy week here on the podcast. We have this weekend. We have our Twisters review. Later next week, we have our Deadpool and Wolverine Patreon review. And then we have our Trap review. That's the thing. M. Night Shyamalan... Daddy's home. Daddy's back. I see you have 2 glass posters in the background.
I cannot wait. It's previewed every time I've gone to the cinema, right? And we've done. I know you guys did Knock at the Cabin, and I couldn't attend that because I was working away. But we did Glass. We've done like a full. We've been here for this guy.
We've done it.
Honestly, this is going to sound so sad and tragic. It's actually something I really look forward to, of just like watching my boy succeed. And I'm like. We did, because I think we did Old as well, because I had a bet with Nick I still haven't done, but I'm not. He doesn't need to know that. Whatever. But like we've been here for throughout we've been here for the bad, we've been here for the good, and we've been on the rise. And it's so fucking heartwarming to get like just have to wait and watch someone just make their own art. They're self-financed. I cannot wait to watch that film with you. I cannot wait to talk about that film with you. Just like two nerdy geeks talking about like, did you watch the new M. Night Shyamalan? Like, we live in a world where like that's a thing again. I like, don't you just love cinema? I love movies.
It's my most anticipated film of the rest of the year. Like, there's no, look, I'm a Lucas Guadagnino stan, so maybe, and like, I will have a moment when I go see the new Paul Schrader film also, but like, there's no other filmmaker. You look on the calendar for me, and I'm like, there's an M. Night Shyamalan film in 2 weeks. Like, I'm counting down the days. Like, I'm literally might shed a tear when it pops up and you see his production logo at the beginning. Like, for me, that's like seeing the Twisted Pictures logo with Saw, right? Like, I'm going to get goosebumps. I'm going to get a little tear. And I'm going to be like, this is fucking sick. Next year got pushed.
Is it? No.
Yeah. Got pushed a full year, which...
I remember that Spiral. You know what? I remember that Spiral episode we did.
I'll never forget, whether I want to or not. I will never forget that. I'll never forget the old episode. We've been through on our boys, but we've seen them through, and I'm so genuinely like, it gives me life. I know I have to make it 2 more weeks because I gotta make it a trap. If I watch that and it's terrible, though, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Crossing the road, looking at both the ways for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. With that, thank you so much for listening. Check out Time Bandits, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.